on. Hello, welcome everyone. Today is the last day of the Rooftop Design Talks, and during the week we had many stimulating talks actually during the week. We talked about the systemic design, sustainability, biomaterials, design for health, convergent design, and now we have our last talk. Our guests are coming from University of Gastronomic Sciences of Pollenzo, which is also my university for my master's degree. We have Professor Nicola Perulo and Dr. Elena Mancioppi. And today we will be speaking about the haptic taste and taste as an experience, and also about the new program of the University of Gastronomic Sciences of Pollenzo. I will just give the microphone to you to maybe have a little entrance.
I use this? Or?
Yeah. Okay.
In English or in Italian? What do you prefer? English. Okay, it's good. So, thank you for the invitation. First of all, my name is Nicola Perulo. I am a philosopher, and I am into this research about food and taste and related issues since about 25 years. So it's going to be a long time, and I started when I was just a kid. I was 23, 24 years old, and now I work in this place, in this institution, University of Gastronomic Sciences, and I work there since about 18 years. I am full professor of aesthetics. I work at many different subjects. Aesthetics as a philosophy of art, the relationship between food and art, ecological aesthetics, perception, and taste, subjectivity and objectivity, and many other different and related issues. And we also have a PhD in this university, and I had also the PhD program, and the PhD program produced last year Dr. Elena Mancioppi, and she worked with me in the last 5 years, and she is a specialist about smell, odors, and aromatic spaces. And I also brought some books for advertising. She just wrote a book about olfaction, and it just released 1 week ago. And we worked together about the senses of smell. We also produce some academic journals. This is just an example. My books. This is Taste as Experience, a book that was published by Columbia University Press in 2016, The Philosophy and Aesthetics of Food. So these are some of the things that I try to also put in the program that ML attended 2 years ago, that now is titled New Food Thinking, and before it was titled Creativity, Ecology and Education. But the marketing office told me that the title was too, 3 words were too much for the internet, so New Food Thinking is more memorable. And so we will see, but the content more or less is the same. It didn't. Well, there are some changes, but the core is more or less the one that you already know. The title is different. So this is just my introduction, if it is fine.
So maybe we can start with the topic, getting inside the topic. So when we think about the haptic taste in the broader sense, what should we understand? What is haptic taste? How should we approach to taste as the haptic experience?
Yeah, as I told you, I've been involved into the gastronomic circus also as a critic, as a food critic. Beside my academic stuff, I have been practiced as a food critic and wine critic for many years, and so I have this kind of experience from the inside. I realized that today there is a lot of talk about food and fine dining or wine, the experience of food, food as culture. But what was missing was the idea of experiencing food from a different perspective. So I try to put it a story that could be very long, but if people are interested, they can ask for more specification. I try to propose an approach to food in a general sense that is immersive, very experiential, very much developed with a sense of awareness and consciousness, and I call this haptic perception or haptic taste. Haptic is a metaphor for something that is tactile, that is engaged and with a sense of contact. So tasting food is not just about detecting flavors and detecting aromas, which is a part of the game, but it is an experience that is more, that can go more in depth, that has to do with the capability of perceiving the processes that are happening while we taste, while we eat or we drink. Processes that are, as I said, immersive because they encompass environmental aspects, ecological aspects, the surrounding. So it's not just about the content of the object that I am tasting. It's something broader. So we try to put the experience of food, the experience of taste, with what we can call the taste of experience in a broader sense. So haptic taste in this sense of being immersed and engaged into processes that goes beyond just the recognition of aromas or acidity, bitterness, something that is sometimes very analytical and very technical. But in my opinion, this doesn't get the full importance of the experience in food, because food is, it's also a metaphor for life, you know. It's not just we consume always, and we consume oxygen, we consume items of every kind, we consume concepts, and we consume food. So we have to be aware that food is not just one separate things from all the others. It is taken into a broader processes. So this is the shortest definition that I can give about haptic taste, so you can imagine the long definition. I can speak for hours, but I stop here.
Dr. Mancioppi, I can ask to you, and how can we approach to tactility through odors, smells? What type of an environment, a space, a dimension does the aromas and the odors create? And how can we think about the speculations of the perceivable spaces through these actually?
Hi, I'm Elena Mancioppi. And I am now a research fellow of the University of Gastronomic Science, and starting from my PhD research, I am studying aromatic spaces, how the sense of smell works, and I'm trying, also following the idea of haptic perception by Professor Perullo, to understand how we perceive spaces when odors are present. And there are many, and in particular food odors. And today we are actually witnessing a kind of, let's say, foodification of the olfactory dimension in which we live. There are items that are food scented, there are candles, there are all branches, for example, of interior design, which are dealing with olfaction, perfumes. So my idea is that we can try to understand the way we live in space, trying to address this problem through the idea of tactile, in the sense that we are always immersed in our environment. We breathe in and out. So in this case, food odors are quite important also because they affect really deeply our imagination, memory, but also the body. For example, if we perceive a food scent, we usually get hungry. So it is very important to understand also the ethical effects of this kind of marketing and design, which is tactile and haptic in the sense that it is processual, relational, and also immersive in this sense. We are always in this exchange between inner and outer.
You know that there is also the Kentucky Fried Chicken perfume. They sell in US the little little bottles of Kentucky Fried Chicken scents for people that love this kind of scents. And there are also shoes and other items that are scented this way. Now, the political aspect is nice because it's nice, and also it's frightening because odors are invisible and they are not subjected to the rules of properties, so they can be spread without any legal aspects. There is, if you want to rent a space, physical space, you have to ask for the permission, and there are some rules. But odors, they are not regulated by them, so
unjudgeable.
A lot of companies are working now on this because they are free to do what they want, to put it very short.
Exactly. And how should we think about the creating, again, spaces and designing experiences? And because also getting into the game, the odors and the tastes, and also the colors. Of course, there's the food psychology, a food, how it is served, in which contextual, external and internal elements it is served to, and it's creating a certain memory. And the memory also comes from everything that is perceivable and also very subtle and still perceivable. And thinking about this, creating those experiences that is taking a part in our memory, turning into unforgettable memories. Maybe we can just wander around some Proust memory and how it is affecting the reality we know, actually.
Yes, this is true. You said, I agree with the analysis, and we can, there are a lot of, today, for example, artists and designers that are working with tastes and smell under this perspective, and I think that you can make some examples from the other sphere,
yes,
that is maybe more interesting today, because of course there are eating designers, and you have met some, and also in the program there are some eating designers that come to teach, and they show how taste can be used into this framework of performative arts and engaging experiences, but maybe others are more interesting.
There is a very interesting example also on the idea of commodification of experience and memory about smell. Since, for example, chemical industries starting from the 50s to use a lot of artificial scenting and flavors in food, and in the, commodities items, various items, there is this interesting study made by a neuropsychologist that reveals that actually our memory, our recollection, our memory is somehow overwhelmed by this kind of artificial flavors studied by marketing, and for throughout the generation, children and people started to, for example, link the artificial flavor of chips, of some pies, cakes, or soft drink, to very intimate experiences, the idea of family, the idea of home, while in past generation this kind of emotion, feelings, were related to other kind of odors which were environmental, for example, fresh cut grass or the odor of the sea. So we are witnessing a kind of commodification of our memory, and this commodification depends on the way food is designed, actually, because it is a way to design the eating experience, the experience, the ecological experience also of food in general. And related to this topic, also in this sphere, many artists are working on the relationship between odors, food, and memory, which are very interesting, and that are trying to make this connection clear, because usually we are not aware of what we perceive through smell. So this is a...
Yes, basically the idea of haptic perception is to develop a better awareness of all this that is always happening, but as you were saying, on a non-conscious level, or a very distracted level. So the idea is to become increasingly conscious of the fact that we are not separated but immersed into these knots, into these bundles of lines where there are, of course, biographical aspects. Everyone has his own memories, his own history, but there are also political and social lines that are not depending on your personal will, on your personal background, are depending on communities, are depending on marketing, are depending on how other people want you to perceive, and how preferences are. Sometimes we think that we choose food that we like, no? But this kind of preferences are everything but free determined. They are determined by a lot of different impulses that come from the outside. So this is also haptic taste, I consider as a task. Taste is a task, is not a sense. I said in a book, if we consider the sense as an isolated sense. No, normally people say, okay, there is taste, there is smell, there is sight, there is hearing, and there is touch. 5 senses. And this is a sort of fragmentation that we make afterwards for purposes that are legitimate. But when we feel and we live an experience, all these senses work together. And these are channels that are often overlapping one or over the other. So we should focus more on the sensing and a little bit less on the specific sensory channels that are the senses, because otherwise we risk to take the single unit and we forget the whole picture. But the whole picture, it is what is more important for the effectiveness, for the perception that we have. We don't perceive as just a position of single units. We perceive in a synthetic way. So the synthetic perception comes before the single fragmentations of the elements. So this is what we try to research and to study when we talk about haptic perception, haptic taste, and new paradigm of food perception. This is the basic point.
Thank you. At the moment, how do you perceive the world that is going around the food, and now with the new food thinking, the considerations and the awareness of that actually food is a holistic systems coming together, sociology, psychology, anthropology, economics, politics, all together within this sense. How do you perceive the world that is thriving around food, or designing food experiences, or designing food, getting into this circle, and how it is connecting the other aspects, maybe also with a comparative approach in different societies, different communities?
We came from a period that has been called by some scholars gastromania. So there was a sort of, everybody was made for food, and Elena mentioned already foodification, and also gentrification of the cities through food, no? The idea that if you are all young, but 20 years ago or 25 years ago, if I was walking through Milan or any cities in the Western world, we didn't find, of course, the same numbers of restaurants, places to eat, to drink as today. It was 1/10 less. It was just one restaurants or a food place every 100 or 200 kilometers, and now there are one every 5-10 meters. So the idea is today that the only way to socialize is through food, through eating and drinking. This is very important. You know? 20 years ago, people, they went out to make things that were not just eating or drinking. And today, if you meet someone, the idea is that you meet someone outside and you go to eat or to drink. There is nothing much more than that. So today we came from this great sbornia, or drunkenness, hangover from, and we are facing a crisis. There is, of course, we reached the peak, and now there is a crisis into this gastromania story. And there's going to be a next step, in my opinion, that will be less places, more selective in terms of giving something that is what we are trying to study, more immersive, more engagement, more enjoyment in a deeper sense. So of course there will always exist places that are just for eating and drinking, but there will be, I think, a natural selection of this kind. Generally speaking, people now are more exigent, they are more peaking, they want something on a higher level that is about not just eating and drinking alone, but having an experience. If you want to spend money for eating outside or for drinking outside, you're just asking not just for the food, but for an environment that is consistent with the quality, and it's also. So I think that the situation is interesting. It's a situation of crisis after this decade of big explosion, but it is an interesting crisis. I also read the analytics for the TV shows about food, no? And the TV shows about food tell us that the audience for programs like Master Chefs and the like are lowering, are going down, because there is less interest just in the phenomenon per se. And I think this is the opportunity for what we can call the haptic approach. An approach, I have tried to develop this haptic approach, as ML knows, with students, and sometimes I have been invited all around the country and also outside the country to make wine tastings that are alternative to normal wine tasting. And the wine tastings that I propose, they are about engagement with drawing, pictures, with music, with body languages, with kind of exercises between people. And so wine becomes a tool for other things that are not just analyzing the quality of a wine, which can be nice, but in a way we had enough of this in the last 10 years. So more and more people are looking for something different, I think.
There is an organization in UAE. They are called Palmwood. They are actually a governmental NGO, let's say, somehow a different body, but somehow related. So what they are doing in this sense, as to give an example, for example, they are opening space to talk about the most challenging issues that they are facing in the societal sense around the tables, around food. So they are coming together, and with the appetizer they are actually making an entrance to the topics with the other plates that are following them. Of course, then the primo comes, the first plate comes, then the second one comes. So the topics are getting more depth as much as the plates get more depth, actually. So this is how they are opening up the conversations. Like, you cannot try to find the solutions with the appetizer, but instead you need to do it during the second plate service. This is just an example of actually how it is also could be used as a tool of facilitation. So my
taste, but then something happens, something in this case bad or not pleasurable, and then we can change our perception. So our perception of good and bad is also affected by other events, happenings, emotions. So it is a continued task in this sense. So we make our sense of smell and taste and our idea of good and bad in these terms.
For example, I am remembering an example given that the molecules, the smell molecules are very similar to each other. Let's say there are two different substances, but the place where it was perceived and the conditions it was perceived is changing the whole data and the whole memory.
Yeah, for example, and also the perception. Think of the odor of garlic in a kitchen that can be pleasant, or the same odor, so the odor of garlic in a university room. It is the same odor, but the experience, the overall experience is opposite. The Parmesan, if you, there is this scholar, Rachel Hertz, that did a lot of research on these topics. And for example, she found out that people, when smelling the same substance, the same odor, but with two different names, namely Parmesan and vomit, they perceive it as more pleasant, the Parmesan instead of the vomit, but the molecules is the same. So also language changes the experience, the space, the time, everything. So experience is very complex and in this sense ecological. It depends on many things. And also our very state, because for example, if we are sick, we experience the same food, the same taste or odor in a way. If we are well, in another way, opposite.
So you have learned that Parmesan and vomit, they have the same molecular pretty same molecular compositions, which is quite interesting.
I think also the honey and the pea, as I once learned. Coming from this, I will ask a more open-ended question about also the aesthetics of food, and also it's related to our perception with the smell and the food as well. How does disgust happen? What is disgust in the sense of aesthetics?
Disgust is a very, very difficult topic. Difficult topic that has been studied a lot. There are different levels. If you take a naturalistic position, there are some natural drivers for disgust. So there are some scholars that think that there is a level of natural biological essence that makes things disgusting for humans. But there is a lot, in any case, of cultural aspects. And disgust is very much a cultural disposition. So we can very easily prove and verify that things that are disgusting for some communities are not disgusting in other communities. And so we can make disgusting pleasurable also if we think that it is contextualized and it is connected to something, no? So it's a matter of when I was talking with someone a few days ago, and when I was in Japan a few years ago, I was in a kaiseki restaurant, very important kaiseki restaurant in Kyoto, 3 Michelin stars, so a wonderful restaurant. But they brought me some dish that it was made by this particular fish that is like a gelatin, a very jelly. And I found disgusting, truly disgusting. I cannot ingest. But for them it was a treasure, it was very important. So my rational palate try to overcome the physiological disgust that I proved, and but if I could be educated, so maybe this first time I didn't eat it, but I could eat if I tried it again and again.
I will ask you the one last question about something that is on the opposite side, maybe, and how does pleasure gets linked with the aesthetics of food, odor, and the hierarchically more subtle senses?
On odors, let's say that the same can be said with pleasure. So pleasure can be interpreted as something that has to do with biological reason, natural reason. So I perceive it as a pleasant, something that is good for my body. My body knows that that substance is not harmful, so I can perceive it as pleasant. But at the same time, also pleasant is culturally driven, so it is the same for disgust. In pleasant, in the idea of pleasure, maybe there is also in disgust, the link, a very tight link with the ethical aspect. So I perceive it pleasant, something that I know that is good for planet, for me, for whatever. Let's think about, I don't know, many substances of kind of beverages that we are assuming today. From a gustatory, let's say, side, they are not pleasant, but we make them pleasant because we know that they are good for something. So I think it is the same as disgust, but the opposite way. This is, of course, related to taste and smell at the same time. Also because it is also interesting in the idea of the ecological perception to see that actually taste and smell work at the same time. They are very intertwined together, also with the other senses, of course, sight, hearing, and so on. But in a way, taste and smell are even more intertwined because of anatomical aspects. And if we, for example, we change the flavor of a food, also the taste will be affected by this kind of change, and this can make one food disgusting or pleasant.
Thank you. And to end, maybe if you would like to speak about the new program that we have, maybe some of you are interested. I said we, but my university.
Okay, this is our university, and it's a very beautiful place. It's a private university. We have many programs, as I said, and this is a program that was designed by me, actually. It has a lot to do with things that we said so far. You can go down. So it's a master program called New Food Thinking, a 1-year master program. And our programs are full-time mandatory presence program, this kind of program. So we are not ready yet for making part-time or for working students programs, because they are, as I fully engaged 1 year in this full experience of food and the environment, Pollenzo environment. So this is a program that combines courses, academic courses, artistic environment, experimental practices, based on this idea of food aesthetics and education that we try to describe in this meeting today. And just to give you academics, food activists, artists, I want to give you some examples. Well, 1 month, English, 1 year, it's starting in October. It is quite expensive for the Italian standard and not so expensive for international standard, but these fees also included all the didactic material and field trips. There are trips all around Europe that are part of the program for 1 week or 10 days each one. So it's quite long experience of traveling abroad. And okay, this is me. You can, okay. There are two main streams, Basic of Food and Gastronomy, and Atelier of Arts, Food and the Senses, and Think Tank. The second one is more workshops and think tank and experiences, and the first one is more classic courses. 3 study trips, Italy and Europe. This was for COVID. We hope that it's over. And then internship or research project at the end of the program, and then the final thesis. These are some. It's not some. These are all the courses that we propose in the first part, Basics of Food Culture and Gastronomy. One field, Humanities and Social Sciences. You see, these are some names: Food and History, Sociology of Coffee Tasting, More Than Human Geographies, Food and Cultural Ecologies, and Food and Psychology. This is one of our visiting professor, Ken Lieberman, a sociologist from US, specializing in sociology of coffee and also Tibetan society. He worked a lot with Buddhist monks, indigenous culture, and he makes books in which he combines coffee tasting with Buddhism, which is very interesting book. Then we have a field about philosophy and education with other instructors like Andreas Weber with a course titled Enlivenment, Me, Taste as Experience, Lisa Elke, Eating, Parasitism and Personhood, and Cooking Skills and Education by Bernie Houghton. You see, it's very international palette of professors. And if you go down, you see some. Andreas Weber, for example, is a biologist and philosopher and nature writer. He wrote extensively about the ecology and the new paradigms of animistic thought. Lisa Elke, she's one of the pioneers of food philosophy. She comes from Minnesota, where she teaches at Gustavus Adolphus College, and she proposed now a philosophy based on the idea of parasitism, which is very interesting. And then we have a strong section about arts and design, where we have some prestigious scholars like Yael Raviv, Food and Art History, Hani and Bani, and they are two architects and designers from Vienna. Food and the Spaces by Caroline Steele from London, and Food Design and Arts from Pedro Reisig, is an Argentinian designer. Yael Raviv, she's director of Umami Food and Art Festival and Umami Projects in New York. Honey and Bunny, these are Sonja Stummerer and Martin Abelsreiter, and they work with architectural spaces and food and other performances. And Caroline Steele, she is world famous for his bestseller Hungry City, and now she published a couple of years ago Citopia, which means food place, and she is specialist in this relationship between food and spaces. And then we have also in this Atelier of Arts, second part of the program, a lot of workshops with many different lecturers and professionals and artists. You can see some of them, food photography, food publishing, art curation, and many. This is one of our most famous by the students lecturer, Maria Vogelsang, internationally renowned artist and food designer. And you see that ML stopped with Maria Vogelsang. Well, she was scrolling fast, and when she saw Maria Vogelsang, she stopped because she enjoyed it a lot, Mary Vogelsang classes. And these are some photos from performances that we made with Marie Vogelsang in the previous years. This is a video of performance. This is me with a band. They made me try something. Andrea Pieroni, our ethnobotanist, specializing in foraging. Students go with him to make foraging around the hills nearby. Emilia Terragni, she's the director of Phaidon Publishing Press, and she's a publishing company specialized in food books, and they edited a lot of cookbooks by chefs, very famous chefs. Erin Manning, another important professor from Canada. Eric Olsson, important food photographer from Sweden. Giulia Soldati, also very young food designer from Italy. Other photos, and here we have food and the senses, a lot of tastings. These are some examples. We make classes tasting beer, honey, wine, cheese, tea, coffee, chocolate, and also some experimental workshops with the sounds, the combination of food and sounds. You are going very fast, and I am trying to follow you, but please just. So we are now speaking about this connection between food and music, food and sound, which is very interesting. And after this, we have food, of course, and the smells with Elena that you already know. And a lot also of conferences about the hot issues of today, gastronomic scene, food marketing, circular economy, education, socio-economical aspects of food, slow food philosophy, sustainability, and other important issues. So these are other protagonists. You can go. It's very important that this is a program that is tailor-made. It's very much flexible on the specific needs and goals by students. So as it is a very small group, a very small university, we follow students very attentively. And this is an image that was created by students a few years ago, and I like to include in the presentation, and then the study trips in Italy and Europe. So this is a very quick presentation. If some of you or someone that you may know could be interested in this program, just write an email. There is an email at the end of the presentation, also for other possible inquiries, questions, or contacts that you want to have with me or with Elena Mancioppi. We are available for continuing the dialogue that we have today.
Thank you so much for coming and being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.